Jawaharlal Nehru, The Discovery of India, Chapter 4, The Earliest Records, Scriptures, and Mythology. Before the discovery of Indus Valley Civilization, the Vedas were supposed to be the earliest records we possess of Indian culture. There was much dispute about the chronology of the Vedic period, European scholars usually giving later dates and Indian scholars much earlier ones. It was curious the desire on the part of Indians to go as far as possible as thus enhance the importance of our ancient culture. Professor Winterneitz thinks that the beginnings of Vedic literature go back to 2000 BC or even 2500 BC. This brings us very near the Mohenjo-daro period. The usual date accepted by most scholars today for the hymns of the Rig Veda is 1500 BC, but there is a tendency ever since the Mohenjo-daro excavations to date further back these early Indian sculptures. Whatever the exact date may be, it is probable that this literature is earlier than that of either Greece or Israel, that in fact it represents some of the earliest documents of the human mind that we possess. Max Muller has called it the first word spoken by the Aryan man. The Vedas were the outpourings of the Aryans as they streamed into the rich land of India. They brought their ideas with them from the common stock out of which grew the Avesta in Iran and elaborated them in the soil of India. Even the language of the Vedas bears a striking resemblance to that of the Avesta, and it has been remarked that the Avesta is nearer the Veda than the Veda is to its own specific Sanskrit. How are we to consider the scripture of various religion, much of it believed by its votaries to the revealed scriptures? To analyze it and criticize it and look upon it as a human document is often to offend the true believers, yet there is no other way to consider it. I have always hesitated to read books of religion. The totalitarian claims made on their behalf did not appeal to me. The outward evidences of the practice of religion that I saw did not encourage me to go to the original sources. Yet I had to drift to these books, for ignorance of them was not a virtue and was often a severe drawback. I knew that some of them I knew that some of them had powerfully influenced humanity, and anything that could have done so must have some inherent power and virtue in it, some vital source of energy. I found great difficulty in reading through many parts of them, for try as I would, I could not arouse sufficient interest, but the sheer beauty of some passages would hold on me, and then a phrase or a sentence would suddenly leap up and electrify me and make me feel the presence of the really great. Some words of the Buddha or of Christ would sign out with deep meaning and seem to me applicable as much today as when they were uttered 2000 or more years ago. There was a compelling reality about them, a permanence which time and space cannot touch. So I felt sometimes when I read about Socrates or the Chinese philosophers, and also when I read the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita. I was not interested in the metaphysics or the description of the ritual or the many other things which apparently had no relation to the problems that faced me. Perhaps I did not understand the inner significance of much that I read, and sometimes indeed a second reading threw more light. I made no real effort to understand mysterious passages, and I passed by those which had no particular significance for me, nor was I interested in long commentaries and glossaries. I could not approach these books or any book or as wholly writ which must be accepted in their totality without challenge or demur. Indeed, this approach of Holy Writ visually resulted in my being closed to what they contained. I was much more friendly and open to them when I could consider them as having been written by human beings, very wise and far seeing, but nevertheless ordinary mortal and not incarnations or mouthpieces of a divinity about whom I had no knowledge or surety whatever. It has always seemed to me as a much more magnificent and impressive thing that a human being could rise to great heights mentally and spiritually and should then seek to rise others up rather than that he should be the mouthpiece of a divine or superior power. Some of the founders of religions were astonishing individuals, but all their glory vanishes in my eyes when I cease to think of them as human beings. What impresses me and gives me hope is the growth of the mind and spirit of man, and not his being used as an agent of convey a message. Mythology affected me in much the same way. If people believed in the factual content of these stories, the whole thing was absurd and ridiculous. But as soon as one ceased believing in them, they appeared in a new light, a new beauty, wonderful flowering of a richly endowed imagination, full of human relations. No one believes now in the stories of Greek gods and goddess, and so without any difficulty we can admire them and they become part of our mental heritage. But if we had to believe in them, what a burden it would be, and how oppressed by this weight of belief we would often miss this beauty. Indian mythology is richer, vaster, very beautiful, and full of meaning. I have often wondered that manner of men and women they were who gave shape to these bright dreams and lovely fancies, and out of what gold mine of thought and imagination they dug them. Looking at scripture, then, as a product of the human mind, we have to remember the age in which it was written, the environment and mental climate in which it grew, the vast distance in time and thought and experience and separates it from it. We have to forget the trappings of ritual and religious uses in which it is wrapped and remember the social background in which it expounded. Many of the problems of human life have a permanence and a touch of eternity about them, and hence the abiding interest in these ancient books. But they dealt with other problems also, limited to their particular age, which have no living interest for us now. The Vedas. Many Hindus look upon the Vedas as revealed scripture. They seem to me to be peculiarly unfortunate, for thus we miss their real significance, the unfolding of the human mind in the earliest stages of thought, and what a wonderful mind it was. The Vedas, from the root Ved to know, we were simply meant to be a collection of the existing knowledge of the day. They are a jumble of many things: hymns, prayers, rituals for sacrifice, magic, magnificent nature poetry. There is no idolatry in them, no temples for the gods. The vitality and affirmation of life pervading them as extraordinary. The early Vedic Aryans were so full of jest of life that they paid little attention to the soul. In a vague way, they believed in some kind of existence after death. Gradually, the conception of God grows. There are the Olympian type of gods and the monotheism, and later, rather mixed with it, the conception of monism. Thought carries them to the strange realms, and brooding on nature's mysteries comes and the spirit of inquiry. These developments take place in the course of hundreds of years, and by the time we reach the end of the Veda, the Vedanta and meaning end, we have the philosophy of the Upanishads. The Rig Veda, the first of the Vedas, is probably the earliest book that humanity possesses. In it, we can find the first outpourings of the human mind, the glow of poetry, the rapture at nature's loveliness and mystery. And in these early hymns, there are, as Dr. McNichol says, the beginnings of the brave adventures made so long ago and recorded here of those who seek to discover the significance of our world and of man's life within it. India here set out on a quest we see has never ceased to follow. Yet, behind the Rig Veda itself lay ages of civilized existence and thought, during which the Indus Valley and the Mesopotamian and other civilizations had grown. It is appropriate, therefore, that there should be the dedication in the Rig Veda to the seers and ancestors, the first pathfinders. These Vedic hymns have been described by Rabindranath Tagore as a poetic testament of a people's collective reaction to the wonder and awe of existence. A people of vigorous and unsophisticated imagination awakened at the very dawn of civilization to a sense of inexhaustible mystery that is implicit in life. It was a simple faith of theirs that attributed divinity to every element and force of nature, but it was a brave and joyous one in which the sense of mystery only gave enchantment to life without weighing it down. The bafflement, the faith of a race unburdened with intellectual brooding and the conflicting diversity of the objective universe, though now again illumined by intuitive experience, as truth is one, the wise call it by various names. But that brooding spirit crept in gradually till the author of the Veda cried out, "O faith, endow us with belief," and raised deeper questions in a hymn called The Song of Creation, to which Max Miller gave the title to the unknown God. Number 1. Then there was not non-existent nor existent, there was no realm of air, no sky beyond it. What covered in and where, and what gave shelter? Was water there, unfathomed depth of water? 2. Death was not then, nor was there aught immortal, no sign was there, the days and night divider. That one thing, breathless, breathed by its own nature. Apart from it was nothing whatsoever. Number 3. Darkness there was, at first concealed in darkness, in all was undiscriminated chaos. All that existed then was void and formless. By the great power of warmth was born that unit. Number 4. Thereafter rose desire in the beginning, desire, the primal seed and germ of spirit. Sages who searched with their hearts' thought discovered the existent kinship in the non-existent. 5. Transversely was their severing line extended. What was woven then, and what below it? There were begetters, there were mighty forces, free action here and energy of yonder. Who verily knows, and who can here declare it, whence it was born, and whence comes this creation? The gods are later than this world's production. Who knows then whence it first came into being? Number 7. He, the first origin, this creation, whether he formed it all or did not form it, whose eyes controls the world in highest heaven, the verily knows it, or perhaps he knows it all, or perhaps he knows it not.